So, welcome everyone. I'm so excited to be hosting this event tonight. Let food be thy medicine, nurturing our relationships with food. And it is an incredible honor to have Angelique Santana here with me. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, this is actually, gosh, the last time we did an event together. I don't know when it exactly was, but it was a few years ago.
Yeah, 2019. I only remember because I had to look for a photo, and I know I spoke to you when my cousin got married. So
Yes. Okay.
yeah, it was in May. It was like around this time actually.
Well, look at that. We vibe
Yeah.
in spring and it's lovely. It's lovely. Um, so we have anybody who's registered and who's here tonight, and then everybody will be receiving the recording. So as we're talking, we might be speaking to that a little bit. And I just want to take a moment and introduce Angelique a little bit more. For those of you who may not know me, I am an integrative practitioner. And I bring together, mindfulness-based practices with some Eastern and Western philosophy, energy medicine, and all of this in different ways we'll be experiencing tonight with that energy medicine activation and some other practices. And we also have the pleasure of receiving lots of amazing, incredible information and some tips and tools from Angelique. So Angelique is the founder and executive chef of Eat with Angelique. It's a small business that she launched with a singular mission in mind to guide people toward a healthy lifestyle, starting but not ending with the food they eat. She's the author of Food is Love, and we're going to hear, I think, a little bit tonight about her second book that is in the process and pretty close to being released. And this whole piece of like, there are no rules in food and love, right? So, food is love. There are no rules in food and love. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
So, in addition to being an executive chef, Angelique is a speaker and a coach and is currently enrolled in a dual master's program, just soaking up lots of incredible information. Um, and it really, from what you shared with me, Angelique, it sounds like also very integrative, coming from
Mm,
maybe more of a Western approach around health and food and diet and wellness. And really now, in a lot of ways, you've been just bringing in more and more from that like Eastern perspective as well.
yes.
Yeah. Cool. Cool. Well, let me see here. I just want to be able to see everyone at the same time. So, tonight we want to do a few things, right? We want to understand some of the factors that contribute to our relationship with food, open perspectives that can support us shifting these relationships in ways that are further going to enhance our health. And it's about food as medicine, right? And so this is one of the reasons I love so much the title of Angelique's book, because it's like, food is love. And I think love and our ability to tap into this broader perspective of love as the food coming into our body, as the relationships that we have with it. And yes, we're honing in on food, but the way that I look at it is that this can be applied in a very broad way, right, to many other things in our lives as well. Um, and so, patterns that want to shift, anything there. So, with all that on the table, it's also Mental Health Awareness Month. And so, we'll be talking a bit about how this specifically relates to our mental health, knowing that we are holistic beings. So, when we hone in on one, there is naturally an interconnected ripple and impact on all of the other areas. So we hone in on the mental health, it impacts the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, and even the wisdom body. So I think we're going to be weaving together bits from all of this tonight. And I'd love, as we take a minute to get started, like as we take a minute and we're here, and anyone who might be listening at a later time is wherever you are and listening to this. And so I'd love to just take a few moments together and arrive. So if you're open to that, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. You could also just lower the gaze, whatever feels best in your body, mind. And just noticing the breath, allowing it to do whatever it needs to do in this moment. Feeling into the buttocks in the chair, noticing where your feet are, noticing where the arms lie. Let's invite a few breaths together. So perhaps on this next in-breath, breathing in and opening to a smooth, gentle exhale, starting to lengthen the exhale, feeling into the body. And again, full breath, opening to receive. Allowing that smooth, gentle exhale, releasing, softening, rooting. One more time, full breath. And just allowing the energies of this day, as we shift into that exhale, to be here. Whatever it is, everything's welcome. Inviting the whole self to recognize, to acknowledge any sensations that are here, any emotions, perhaps the pace of the breath. And perhaps for a moment, just tuning into your personal motivation to be here. Maybe what it is that you hope to receive this evening. If there's anything specific, and there doesn't have to be. Let's take a breath, deep breath in. On that exhale, feeling into the rootedness of the body here, perhaps arriving just a little bit more. And inviting all of the words, all of the experiences tonight to unfold. Knowing that even though Angelique and I are guiding the information, this is collaborative. And so feel free to post in the comments, feel free to share when we open that. One more full breath. Smooth exhale. Just inviting that transition whenever it feels ready. And so if there is anything that came up for you that you want to take with you from this session, if it can be something that you just told here, if you want to share it in the chat, by all means, put that in there. We will be opening some space as well for more, intention, shares, questions, and stuff like that along the way. So thank you for being here. And as we kick off this conversation, we're talking about our relationship with food. And if you've been reading some of the newsletters or any of the social media stuff that went out, in a conversation where Angelique and I were planning and preparing for this, one of the things that really stood out to me that she shared was this piece of people can be really stressed around their relationship with food, right? And maybe not all of us here tonight are, and maybe some of us never have been. And maybe that level of stress has come and gone, changed over time and blended. But Angelique, I want to turn it over to you around that and just to maybe share, from your view inside the kitchen, and coaching people and speaking about this. What do you, what feels relevant to bring in around that tonight?
Well, the one thing for sure is that we all have to eat. And there are foods that we naturally gravitate to. And I think from what I've seen, like when I work with clients, when I cook for them or coach them, it's a relationship with food. It like dates way back to when you were little, right? Like you were not in charge of anything. Your parents fed you or your caregiver fed you. And a lot of times it, depending on how old you are, right? Because I think things are different now. Like I see a lot of parents now trying to cater to the children's taste and want to feed them whatever they want, and get frustrated that they don't eat what you want to serve them or whatever everyone else is eating. So there's two parts to this, right? So number one is feeding yourself. And what I like to do is have people think about how they ate as a kid. So what did you eat for breakfast? What did you eat for lunch? What did you eat for dinner? So like all the meal times, and then what were your go-to snacks, including the things that you drank. Like what was the beverage? And then what was your relationship with those food items, right? Like, are you only listing the foods that you liked? Are you including the foods that you didn't like? Because that it tells a whole story, right? That asking you to do that exercise, I want you to tell the whole story. Tell me what you like to have. Tell me what you didn't like to have. Because most likely you had to eat it anyway, right? And then when it comes to the children, like feeding the family, right? I hear a lot, especially from women, right? Feeding myself and feeding the family. I want to eat this way, but my partner wants to eat a different way. And what I say is you have to feed yourself first, and then consider what everybody else wants. And this plays a big role, especially if your diets are different, right? Like I'm vegan, but I may not be with a vegan partner. And or my, I don't have children. I don't have a partner either. But so if I had kids though, and they want to eat differently, I would say a lot of parents want to include vegetables in the meal, right? So you make the vegetables if you're it for you and for them, and then just feed yourself first, and then think about what everybody else wants, right? Like you don't have to have the things that they are having, but they could have whatever you're having. Is basically the bottom line, right? Like make what you want and then feed them. Or so that's to answer your question about the relationship with food. If you think about how you ate as a kid, and then think about how the same it is now or how different it is now. And if it's the same, well, I guess the big question once you see this list, after you do this exercise, is what is the question that you're asking yourself right now? What is the struggle? What questions do you have that you need to answer in, because like Shannon said, she loves the no rules with food and love. And so I would ask Shannon, do you have a specific question? What do you like about that? I mean, nobody likes rules. Nobody likes to be told what to do. I totally get that. And even when it comes to cookbooks, I know I wrote one, and I tell people all the time, like the rules are guidelines, except for when it comes to the law. Everything else is a guideline, and they can be modified, and you can leave things out if you don't like them, and you can add things in if you prefer them. And so a lot of people who buy my book are not even vegan. And so, like the eggplant stack has mozzarella cheese. And so you might not put vegan mozzarella cheese, you might put regular mozzarella cheese. But the techniques are very different because nothing in the book is fried except for one recipe. Everything is baked or done on the stove. So, but so you get to basically pick and choose because you're the boss.
Well, and I think that's a big piece, right, when it comes to relationship with food, that sometimes as we get older, I love what you're talking about in terms of the relationship and maybe an easy way to break it down, especially if there's more than one person, right?
Hmm.
And you're working to accommodate multiple desires, likes, dislikes, even perspectives and relationships. But that like as adults, as we get older, and there could be a variety of people listening to this, probably from 18 and all the way up, right?
Hmm.
um
Hmm.
but so that changes over time. And I like what you're talking about bringing in the whole story and considering like, what was this like? Because that brings us into these foundations and what are some of the underlying factors of our relationship with food, right? And you hit on our memories. What are our memories about it? What are our thoughts about it?
Hmm.
How did we feel? Somehow I don't know, but I've reflected on this. So when I was growing up, I was a bit more of a picky eater. Now I consider myself a foodie. And although I lean certain ways, I like to say I reserve the right to eat what I want. And
Hmm.
you know, um, to some extent. And but to your point, right, like the people who were guiding me when I was a kid, my parents who set it up, they wanted me to eat everything that was there. And I also was a little bit stubborn. So I wouldn't
Aries.
if I didn't like it. It was like I couldn't do it if I didn't like it. I like to think that my intuition was on already.
Yeah. No,
You know?
that is very true.
Yeah.
Because I have friends also who, oh, all my kids want to eat is fruit all day long. All they want to do is eat fruit. And she's thinking like the sugar. And I'm like, kids are the most intuitive people you ever met. They are a genius. Okay. When you are born, when you were born, when I was born, we were all geniuses. We were living intuitively. We asked for what we wanted because that was what we wanted. And I would give them whatever they want to a certain degree, right? Like if it's cake and chips and junk food, definitely not. But if they want to eat fruit all day, knock yourself out, you
Sure.
know?
Sure. Yeah.
Smoothies and fresh fruit and whatever, like I would do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and so for me, that wasn't the case at the time. And so what would happen was that the timer would get set and it would be like, okay, back, right? That's what my family calls me. All right, back, we're going to set the timer. And I'm like, I'm telling you, I'm not actually going to eat this food. So you can set the timer all you want. So I sat
Yeah.
there a lot. I sat at the table a lot and I didn't eat my food and it caused like this tension. But ultimately I didn't care, right? Like, I mean, I cared, but like
Yeah.
I didn't care enough about the dessert to suffer through the squash or whatever it was, right? But right, so these emotions, and I guess I bring that in because for somebody else, like we're all different, and for somebody else that could create a whole bit about their relationship with food.
Absolutely.
And like, so our memories, our thoughts, our emotions, what are the felt sensations in the body? Can we eat, right? Some people, when stress comes in, sometimes stress triggers overeating in certain individuals. Other people, it triggers undereating,
Right.
right? And so, like, there's all these different pieces. And then we bring in, right, our own desires, our own cravings, and even our mindsets and attitudes. And so, I just want to share here briefly this perspective scale. And I use this a lot for a lot of different things. And, for those of you who are here or who registered, you're going to get an email with all of these resources. So anything that we share or links and things like that tonight. So, this applied to what we're talking about this evening. How is our relationship to food? Is it like doom? Is it like, I don't know what the hell to do? It doesn't feel good. I'm, feeling overweight or I'm feeling underweight or I can't eat or is it like, no, oh my gosh, this is a gift, and these are the polar ends of the spectrum. We could be anything in between, and it could also shift over time. And very likely it has. I know that at times in my life it has.
Mm.
Um, and so as we identify some of these factors, just consider for you as it's coming up, like, where are you now? Where might you have been in the past? And the cool thing is my hope is that a tool like this can help us recognize where we are. And so maybe that means we give credit from where we've come from, and or it gives us information about what's happening now, right? Maybe we're in a place where we want to stay. And so, like, what's happening now and how we can continue as our lifestyle medicine practices, or even which way we want to lean, and then, gaining resources or information about how to do that.
Mhm.
Um, these underlying factors, and some underlying and some not, have to do with how we feel about food as love. Is it diet? Is it, and I think in one of our conversations, Angelique, you were talking about like the foundation of the relationship. And I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'd love to hear you touch in about this, but we were kind of talking about like self-trust versus the rule following.
Mm, mm,
And,
yeah,
anything you want to share around that?
absolutely. I think, um, we evolve over time, right? So your relationship changes for sure with food, but your relationship with yourself is also important to understand, your needs, your wants, your desires. And I always say that when you go to reach for something, ask yourself why. Like, why am I going for this? Is it a comfort food? Like, is it something that, a parent or caregiver gave to you? Like, was it a treat? Just kind of think about why you're reaching for it. Like, I have a massive weakness for bread, and I, I, I eat a lot less of it now, but I was eating a ton of it. And it's a filler, right? Like, it's a filler. So consider what your emotions are. How are you feeling right now? As a way to kind of analyze. But um um what were we talking about?
We were talking about like the self-trust versus the rule
Yes,
follower.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, right, right. So there are a lot of rules, right? And there are a million different diets out there. And there is not one diet that works for everyone. So taking someone's advice as to which diet would work for you, like, and by the way, every time, like just recently, so many people were on keto, and now they come back and say keto is the worst diet you could be on. I
Mm.
just heard that not too long ago. And I mean, I hear it too about being vegan. Some people are like, oh, I can't do a vegan diet because, I don't get enough protein, or like some other something, right? And uh I definitely haven't had that experience, but it's also not as easy for everyone because it is a mindset thing, right? But you just like I was talking about little kids being intuitive, they trust themselves so much. Like they know
Yeah.
what they want.
Yeah.
And until we start telling them, and this happened to us too, right? Until we start telling them no, 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 like now we're making rules, like your parents did to you. You have to eat this, set a timer. I mean, that could cause so many different issues in a person.
Yeah.
And it's really a very delicate relationship,
Yeah.
food.
Yeah.
And food comes with so many components. It's not just about um what to eat, but it is that, right? Like what to eat, but then there's food shopping, and then there's cooking, and then there's storing. And then there's like, what happens if you don't eat it and you have to throw it out and you're like really upset because now you just threw out all this stuff and it costs money. It is a mountain of things.
And
And
can I interject there for a
yeah.
second? Because first of all, a couple of things that you said, and I couldn't agree more. And I think, right, like we're pulling this out. And I don't know how you guys are feeling on the call, right? But I'm feeling like, oh yeah, I'm feeling the stress of it. This is what we're dealing with. It's like I like to think of the metaphor of going in the cereal aisle and being like, I mean, it's an entire aisle of cereal boxes. Like, how does one decide?
Hmm.
And that's what I hear you talking about, and I can feel it in my body. It actually, as you're saying all these things, I can feel that pressure rising.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to one of the things that you said first around this, which was asking the self why.
Mm.
And the thing I love about that is you're talking about, at least the way it moves through my filters and my system, is turning on our conscious awareness, stepping out of the autopilot and stepping out of the like, what is the memory or what was the lesson from my parent or my grandparent or the cultural input and what is my
Right.
body telling me?
Hmm.
Because just that, and if we take care not to make that a problem, but to make that like this opportunity for discovery, like, oh, interesting,
Exactly.
what's my why? Not like, "Oh, why am I doing this?" But more like, what's the why? And I just want to show when you talk about the mountain, I was thinking about this, right? The choice overload. And I've got a couple articles that I'm going to share, um, in the follow-up email, but I just wanted to share this
Mm.
as we're talking about it. So this particular article that I will share with you talks about, the paradox of choice. And can you all see that graph?
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, the subjective state, that's like what we think and feel and how we view it, right? This is like how it's impacting us, subjective. What's my experience? And, right now, for those of us on here, we could experience the same thing and have a different subjective experience. So let's just acknowledge that. That is, I think, important in this conversation. And the line, that arrow that comes, that horizontal arrow, is number of choices. So as the number of choices increase, and at first we want more choices. More choices feel like freedom, but it
Mm.
starts to, there's a sweet spot there. Oh, yay. I don't just want, you know, golden grams all the time. I sometimes want bran flakes or whatever it is, but then you go from 5 options to, I don't even know, hundreds. And when it comes to this, and Angelique, what you were just saying, like the diets and the rules, and is keto in, is keto out, is coffee good for us, is coffee bad for us, and the flip-flopping, it's a very dual in this world, and that the number of choices happen, it starts to go into a negative and it says subjective state, but like this negative subjective state, really what it's talking about is, can we handle the information?
Mm.
Is it serving us or is it not serving us? And when it becomes too much, our systems start to go into some paralysis.
Yeah, which then leads to not choosing and maybe even just settling for the choice somebody else made for us when it's really not what we want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And so I'm going to stop sharing. Is that cool with everybody if I take this one down? Yep. Okay. You'll get this one too. So just so you know that. And so this piece, Angelique, that you're talking about, the intuition, how do we navigate the choices, feeling into the body? It's a lot of stuff to filter through. And how do we support ourselves in that? So I just want to touch in on the gut brain today. Um, and so the gut brain is also known as the enteric brain, and it is actually central in our relationship with food. It actually goes from, the back of the throat all the way down through, the whole esophagus, all the way down into the intestines. It includes both intestines and then actually all the way, through the colon. This is our enteric brain. And there's so much, and I'm only going to touch on some. I'll be giving more resources in case you're interested, but at this moment, but there's so much in here, and it ties directly into, all of this. Our relationship with things ties into our holistic health, but specifically our mental health, right? Mental health and our relationship with things. How do we think about it? How are we feeling about it? Do we want to approach it? Is it easy? Is it stressful? This is this categorizes our mental health. And here we're talking about food, right? A primary source of fuel for our survival. And when we navigate and we're able to kind of get in, I don't know, like right relationship with it, a relationship that serves us. And I'm not talking right or wrong. I'm talking like one that actually fuels in a positive trajectory our relationship. It can support us to thrive. So even though food is the basis for our survival, sometimes when our relationship is out of whack, we can be in survival mode around food. But food as love, the way I see that is that it is like, oh, it's the juice for us thriving and like loving on ourselves at this baseline level.
Right. Right.
Anything you want to add in there? I know I'm going to do a little piece and we're going to do something to activate the gut brain, but I just want to pause there and see if there's anything you want to say.
I just wrote a note a little while ago, but it's like you mentioned this, right? Like it's a self-discovery journey. We don't think about these things. Things come up all the time. And if you're really open to receiving the messages from yourself, and this just goes along with the love, trust, and honesty part, is that we love other people way more than we love ourselves. Most people, like, it's what I find to be true, is that love is harder for us to express to ourselves. It happened to me. Trusting yourself, like trusting that you actually know what's best for you. We ask everyone else opinions and what they think is best for us, as if they're not us. Like we know better. It's like somewhere back there you're asking these questions to other people, but you already know the answer. And being honest about that, being honest about what you like, what you don't like, what feels good, what does not feel good, and moving in that direction. I think those three things are like super, super important.
Yeah. And, I guess question for you about your book, right? Like food is love. And you just shared that, that ability to offer self-love, at some point was a challenge. And I second what you're saying. And, as someone who's worked in the healing, mental health, right, caregiving role, pretty much my whole life, and being second oldest of 6 kids, came in with a lot of responsibility, a lot of caregiving in that aspect. And so anything you want to share, like, does that, your relationship with love and self-love, tie into your book in a way that you feel comfortable sharing?
Love and self-love. I really just think that, well, the title of the second book is Food is Love and More. And I do, there's going to be a part about love, trust, and honesty. Yeah, I had a very, I like you, right? My parents fed me. I had to eat the food they gave me, which was totally, I liked the food they gave me. But I realized as I got older and I like started playing sports, I had a different taste for food. So I didn't eat a lot of red meat. I actually hardly ever ate red meat as a teenager and a young adult. I had turkey, salmon, chicken. Those were my proteins. And I loved a lot of vegetables, which kind of makes sense to where I'm at right now. But also, another factor that influences your diet is money. How much money are you making? How much money did you have, like, as a family when you were little? Did you not have a lot of money, so you ate differently? And I see in myself too, my relationship with myself as I started to make more money, or I was working in different industries. When I went and worked in restaurants, I started eating a lot of red meat. I gained like so much weight, not from that, but later on, just as I changed back into fitness from restaurants and started making a lot more money, I was indulging. I was going out to eat. I wasn't working out as much. Like, all these other things became more important than myself. And so I had to return to me in order to be well. Like, I have this one life. I don't get a second chance at life. And if I want to live, not that I was going to die, but if I want to live a good life and I want to live a long life,
Yeah.
then I have to change my relationship with myself, which then means that I will make better choices in the foods that I select, And so, yeah, it's just that it is a very hard, complicated, like, interwoven, story that just like really can translate into a lot of areas of your life, not just the food part.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really powerful. Thank you for sharing. And, it's so true. It's like, what is the quality of life? And the interesting thing, when we start looking at quality of life and life satisfaction, we're really invited to put down the short term. Doesn't mean we can't enjoy the short-term pleasures, but we're really invited to shift our relationship with them and consider, like, what actually feels good in my body versus what tastes great in this moment. And
Exactly.
looking at that, like, okay, this is what's going on now. It's really fun. It's really good. And then where is it going to lead me? And so there's this dynamic. And I don't know how much this tied in, but it also makes me think, as I hear you share, of like the intrinsic, right, coming from the inside. And I think oftentimes that's tied into our wisdom body. That's the voice inside that's saying, like, okay, you want to go out, you want to have that, fabulous, but all these other things, and what do you
Why?
really want long term, right?
Yeah.
And the difference between like the intrinsic and the extrinsic, which a lot of times, and like asking that why is it happening? Oh, I'm doing it because I want to socialize, or I really like the way that it tastes, or I'm feeling sad and it makes me feel better, or so many different things. And when you're talking about it feeling hard and complicated, you mentioned a really important word that was like the story. And so, my hope is that tonight, here all together, we can get the story out on the table, because oftentimes it's like we can get the story on the table and then that helps us have it all out there and pull out the simple facts so that it actually doesn't have to be hard.
Right.
And we can recognize and maybe sometimes go in and reflect or journal or talk to a friend, and the story comes out again, because this is how we get into that self-discovery. But that it doesn't have to be hard, that we can shift these relationships with ease, that we can filter through like the information overload by coming back into the basics. So I'm going to share with you a practice. We're going to do a practice together. And this is something that you can take and you can use at any point. And what we're going to do is we're going to activate the gut brain, because the gut brain ties to our mental health in some major ways. There are actually neurotransmitters that are created in the gut brain, that are stored in the gut brain. And in our Western view, so much, this is starting to become a bit more widely known. It's probably been known for, I'm estimating, 30 years. So in the world of science, that's like nothing. That's like a blink of an eye. Um, but so we get to hear it now and know it now. And the cool thing is when we raise things into our consciousness, it's like seeing the stars in the darkness. We can then begin to work with them. And if we can do so with ease, if we can take a breath and release any judgment and say, okay, cool. Wow. Our Western culture puts so much on the head brain. We think the head brain is doing everything. And it is incredible, but really it's our hard drive. It's processing the information. The signals come in and it sends the programs and it runs on the programs. And is it phenomenal and fascinating? And like, in my view, yes, yes, like so much. And there are these other areas of the body that actually do some of the things that we've been thinking the head brain does. And as we expand our conscious knowledge about that, we begin to activate those centers and allow them to do their job. This takes off some of the load from the head brain. And so tonight, I'm also just briefly going to mention the heart brain. We're going to work with the heart. And so when information comes into the body, when we're talking about turning on our intuition, when we're talking about turning on that wisdom, tapping into the quality of life that I know I want to have, and I'm guessing people like perhaps all of you want to have in some way, shape, or form, right? We get to activate this part. And so I'm just going to share, right, the way that information it naturally filters through, because the heart brain actually has a huge role also. And I'm not going to talk too much about it, but like also in the heart, we think of dopamine being produced so much in the head brain. There is dopamine produced in the head brain, but a whole lot of it is produced in the heart. So this practice actually helps us to activate and utilize more successfully the flow of information through the heart brain into the gut brain. So we come into the heart, we go down into the gut, and that information then comes up into the brain for processing and for programming being sent out. Okay. How's this feeling? Everybody with me?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so if it's comfortable, I'm going to invite you to close the eyes again, just so we can sort of tune in, lower the gaze if that feels comfortable. There's no right or wrong here. And I know we've been speaking a lot of words, so let's just take a moment of silence, perhaps finding your breath. Each exhale, feeling into the groundedness of self, the root, the buttocks, the back of the legs on the chair. Let's invite a full breath in, opening to receive. Smooth, gentle exhale, releasing. We'll do that one more time together. Full breath, receiving, allowing that breath to come in through the whole torso, all the way down. Gently releasing, feeling into the rootedness of self. If it feels welcome, maybe bringing the hands over the abdomen as we highlight the enteric brain and bringing into the mind's eye the visual, right? And if it's vague, if it's, distinct, doesn't really matter, but just starting with that, the intestines and the way that they link from the back of our throat and all the way down. And let's just take a breath of gratitude for the ways that this helps us digest life. Perhaps on the exhale, we acknowledge those gut feelings, that deep knowing. We've all felt it in our gut, allowing us to tune in. And so on this next breath, as we breathe in, we're going to do this in just a moment. We're going to breathe in through the heart. So breathing in together, imagine as if you could take this breath into the heart and exhaling it down into the gut. And on the next in-breath, carrying that breath as if it traveled up into the head brain and perhaps out through the third eye, releasing. We'll bring this into a circuit, breathing in through the heart, receiving, traveling this information down into the gut brain, and allowing this to be carried all the way up into that head brain, breathing in. And exhaling through the forehead center. And coming into a circuit, traveling right back in through the heart, breathing in. Allowing this to go down into the gut and all the way up into the head brain. Just feeling this activation of this channel, allowing that to continue. Exhaling, maybe it feels better to exhale through the mouth, perfectly fine. Breathing in, and this time maybe imagining a white light energy traveling with the breath down into the gut, up into the head brain, and out through the mouth or through the forehead. One more time, in through the heart, down through the abdomen, this enteric brain center, our intuition, our wisdom, and all the way up into the head brain. And one more, exhaling all the way out of the body, releasing. And then body talk, we like to activate by tapping. So if it feels welcome in your body, let's take our hands and just tap over the top of the head, tapping over the heart, tapping over the abdomen. We'll do one more round, like a waterfall, tapping over the top of the head, tapping over the heart, tapping over the abdomen. You can rest the hands either on the abdominal area or just on your lap, and just feeling for a moment into this breath, this body. On the next exhale, feeling into the groundedness of self here and now. In your own time, inviting the eyes to open. Yeah, so as we engage, right, conscious awareness about the function of this, I like to call it, right, this organ, we're talking about this three brain complex. And just for fun, I'm just going to share a little picture here for a hot moment. And as we increase our awareness of the function of this organ, you can see that gut brain there, and you can see these three center channels, and they link together, right? So this activating breath we just did, you could do it while driving in the car, obviously keep your eyes open, anywhere, right? But just bringing that thank you, right? Any aspect of what we just did, you can use in a way that works for you. And this helps us bring online the full capacity to support our overall holistic health. Like I said, more information will be shared about this in that follow-up email if you want to dive deeper, and I'll always be available for questions or anything else about that. So, and maybe I'll just pause here for a moment. Are there any questions or comments? What are you noticing in your body? Maybe I'll just open it up for a moment if anybody wants to speak before we move on.
Yeah, I noticed the same thing when we did that. I'm kind of hungry. And I noticed when I did that went away.
Mm-hmm.
That was like kind of powerful. Because I have a tendency to, I think it's boredom to some degree, or just wanting to get up and moving around. So the question of like, why am I going to grab this, is usually because my stomach, my gut kind of doesn't, it feels empty, but I'm not actually sure it's empty. So It's a good question to ask. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing it. And, I love that for me, like in my mind's eye, hearing you share that sort of weaves these two pieces together, right? This key of like, okay, why am I hungry, or is it more like an emotional thing,
Right.
yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
Mm.
sometimes you're just thirsty and you really need to have something to drink.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's such a good point. Like I remember when I learned about like the trigger for water and for thirst. And maybe you've all heard this, and Angelique, I don't know, maybe you can speak to this more, but like it's a known thing now out there that, you know, we may not be triggered for thirst, but that doesn't mean we are not dehydrated or in need of it. It actually means that we've overridden the signal so many times that it no longer gets triggered into our awareness that we're thirsty. And it might show up as another emotional need or something else. And talk about our intuition. We can do, and like this whole piece with the activating the enteric brain and our conscious awareness, because this is our body talking. And we aren't really taught how to listen to the signals. And that's, as I think all of you here know, like this is something that I work with very deeply in my own life in a whole lot of ways. How can we reactivate this communication? And the enteric brain, huge, 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 huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it just goes back to the relationship with you that you have with yourself and listening to yourself, because really you do know best, and trust that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, another topic here that I really kind of wanted to bring out to the table, and, Angelique and I had some awesome conversations leading up to today. And, when we talk about our health, when we talk about food as medicine and letting food be thy medicine, right? Can we receive it as that? We're talking about our relationship with it. What is our perspective? How can we open to shifting from the complex story into the basics, and the role of intuition in that? And then we have this piece of like, if I think about food as this like primary fuel and source, and I think about health, I think it's so important to talk tonight about food. And this relates to our perspective also, but I'm going to turn it over to you, Angelique, to talk a bit about inflammation, why we want to bring that conversation in, and anything you feel, can be helpful for everybody here.
Sure. So I think the conversation we had about inflammation was we were talking about food sensitivities. And we know a lot about allergies and what happens when you have an allergy reaction. And most times we think the extreme, right? Like the anaphylactic, can't breathe, throat closes kind of allergies. But inflammation is like a little creepy crawler. You don't know it's there. It's very subtle until it's not. And a lot of times it comes from food sensitivities. And food sensitivities are also little creepy crawlers because you don't notice them. You're eating these foods. I'll give you an example. So before I went vegan, I was vegetarian. So like I had gone vegan for 28 days and then I went back to eating regular, like the standard American diet. Then I went vegetarian and I was still eating eggs and cheese. And I didn't know anything about food sensitivities either. And only up until a couple of years ago, and it's not new, right? It's just new to me. And I got my results back and it said that I was 100% sensitive to egg whites and 95% sensitive to egg yolk. And I was like, OMG. you know, because not only was I overweight, but I had a lot of inflammation, and I didn't look at it that way. But then you know, of course, with the results, you start to like put, you know, one and one and together. And, you know, there were other things on the list, you know, and it was just like so shocking. Like barley was on there. It's like, I shouldn't drink beer. And, but it was really like a like eye-opening experience for me. I had my sister take it, my brother take it, my mother take it. I have all the clients take it. Yeah, I had one client. This is a true story. Okay. I had one client who she couldn't figure out what was wrong with her at all. And I had her take you know, she went to a naturopath. She went to all the doctors, all of them. And we got her results back, and there was a lot on there. And so we really had to modify the way that she was eating. And her husband did all the cooking, so she just ate whatever he ate. Is a good example, right, of the relationship with food. So when we started to take away some things and add things that she wasn't getting, it went away. Whatever she was experiencing went away. And it was so crazy. I mean, she also lost weight in the process, but she also started cooking. And then whatever was ailing her disappeared. And I mean, I know that she fell off the wagon and started, you know, eating whatever and not following that. Because a lot of times it doesn't have to be a permanent thing. It could be temporarily just eliminate these things from your diet and then slowly start integrating them back and see how you feel. And if you feel fine, great. If you don't, then you know you can't add that back. Like that's just something you have to maybe take a little bit longer time. Like 30 days is the shortest, you know, and then 90 days is the longest for the experiment. But then, of course, again, as you start to add things back into your diet, if they irritate you, then just eliminate them completely. And so inflammation is just, you know, it causes so many different things in your body, right? Like arthritis. I mean, it just causes so many problems, inflammation. And inflammation, like the real job of inflammation, like a healthy inflammation is protection. It's survival. It's like a way to protect you. But if you keep introducing these foods into your diet, it's constantly fighting. I actually learned from one of the guys at the testing center that a lot of women who have trouble getting pregnant have trouble because they're eating foods that their body has to keep fighting off, so they can't do this other massive job of getting pregnant. And so I just really thought it was so interesting. This thing that we think really nothing of is like a big problem.
Well, and I love that because, you know, what I have learned, and definitely correct me if you have a different view on this, you know, is that I often think of inflammation as like the distractor. You know, like it can be very healthy. It is a good thing. Our body has the wisdom to heal itself. Right. And, you know, going back to that, like choice overload, when we get too much or too many things that it's working to heal, it gets distracted and it stops being able to work in our favor. And so we need these resets. And so, you know, like you talking about having these, I'm going to call it an elimination diet. Sounds like, I think there's a lot of varieties of what that could be. But like that helps the body to reset. And it doesn't necessarily mean forever, but it's like, let's get a blank slate. Let's come back to the singular choice options that we can easily, like coming back into ease and simplicity, because just like chronic stress at a low level is distracting to us, right? If I'm chronically stressed about you name it, anything that's going on. I'm likely to be less present in my relationships. I'm likely to be less present with myself and what my own needs are. I'm likely to, be more distracted in certain places, like, and the list goes on. And that's kind of like mental emotional stress. I think of inflammation as that when it is chronic, and it can be at like chronic low level, like 4 out of 10, or somewhere in there. It is a distractor. And then something happens, we bang our finger and we really need the inflammation to go there, but it can't, because it's like trying to put fires out everywhere. It's like, if I bring that perspective scale back up, or, when you have this, if you listen to it again or whatnot, and you look at it, that's fires going out, right? And it might be in the problem orientation or in the doom, like the inflammation is the innate wisdom in the body trying to heal itself. That is the healing self. But when it gets taxed and overwhelmed, which is so interesting, because let me say this, like, it gets burnt out, and then it doesn't have enough to give where it really needs to give. And why I paused and said this is interesting is because, Angelique, I think when you and I were talking about this, we were talking about how burnout can actually be a cause of chronic inflammation. Like, I think there was something around that, or like exhaustion, right, can lead into chronic inflammation, the tiredness. Like, we need that reset all around.
Yeah, I think we were talking about sleep and how important it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, let's just take a breath together with everything that's here. Deep breath in. Yeah. And, just kind of like looking at where we are tonight, we're going to open it up in a minute for questions and reflections. But before we do that, Angelique, would you share, first of all, anything that you feel you want to pull in at this point? And then really, I want to hear more about like the discovering the mess and your recipe for wellness, because I think that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, I moved back home to New Jersey from Florida to help take care of my mom. And I was finishing the first book. And then the second book just kind of like started writing itself. I didn't know what it meant exactly until like more recently in the last year or two. But so discovering the mess, literally, I discovered the mess. And it's basically just the recipe for wellness, and the mess actually is move, eat, sleep, and self-discovery. And so I'll break, like when I'm breaking it down in the book, but movement is like, I didn't say exercise, I said move. And movement means, yes, exercise, right? Go for like, do what you want, any form of movement that you like. Like, some people don't like to go to the gym. Maybe you like to walk. Some people like to run. You go for a hike, or dance. Like, dancing is great exercise. But just move. And movement also means be social. Like, you need to get out there and be social, because social interaction is very good for your health, right? Versus isolation. Eat, of course, that's self-explanatory. Like, we all have to eat, eating and drinking. I do talk about drinking also. Like, you have to hydrate, you have to drink lots of water. Your body is made mostly, of water. And so eating and also includes that. But I also talk about the other things that you feed yourself, like your thoughts. What kind of information are you taking in? If the news is terrible for your health, don't watch the news. So, consider other things that you're feeding yourself, including people in your life. Like, if people are not serving you and they're just stressing you out and making you feel miserable, get rid of them. So that's the eat part. Sleep, of course, right? Like, everybody needs rest. Sleep is a time for your body to rest and repair. It is also a time for fasting. So you have to make sure that you are getting enough sleep. And I definitely was the person who's like, 5-6 hours, that's great, it's fine. But really, you need like 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Between 7 and 8 hours is like the sweet spot. And then the last one is the S is for self-discovery. So many people are talking about self-care, and they're talking about manicures and pedicures and massages. And I think that's great, but no one's talking about self-discovery. And really that is about getting to know yourself, really getting to know who you are today, how your previous experiences in life have impacted who you are today. And sometimes that requires therapy, sometimes it requires coaching, sometimes it requires it definitely requires digging deep. But you really want to get to know yourself, like get curious about who you are the way you get curious about who other people are. And that's my recipe.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that recipe. And what it makes me think of too is releasing like the perfectionism. And when we, if we circle back to the like beginning of this whole conversation, our relationship with food, and sometimes it does feel easier. It's like, just tell me what to do. Let me be the rule follower. Okay, keto's the thing. All right, I got it. Makes it simple. Part of it goes into that like decision overload. All right, okay, I can eat these 5 things. Give me a stick of butter. Fabulous. Like whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I tease. I know, people who have like loved the keto diet. I think it's very interesting, and that's okay. But just, it continues to change, and that information overload. So it's like, it's okay. But when we recognize, if we can self-discover that, if we can discover the mess, and, one of the words that I have been, really loving over these last 3 years, especially more than ever in my life, is play. Like, can we be playful with it? Even something that at times can feel really sticky, complex, hard. Like, what if we lighten it up a bit? And, I also like, just want to invite this idea of like going for the soft entries. So if there is an area of anything that Angelique and I have talked about tonight, or that comes up at any point, even as we continue this, like if there's an area that feels hard versus other areas that feel soft, go into the soft ones first. Like, I know I'm doing this well. Or, oh my gosh, right. If I drink more water, my trigger for when I'm thirsty is going to get activated. Let me begin there. And when we can begin there and we can give ourselves credit for how that's going, this is not only our relationship with food and drink and all of these things, it's our perspective, it's our mindset, but it comes into that food is love, the self-discovery, and this act of like being in relationship with ourself.
I love that.
Yeah. And so I want to take a moment. We are, in a little bit, we're going to bring all this in. I'm going to do some body talk. We're going to activate the energies for everybody that's here in any way that it lands. If you've experienced it before, then you know. If not, we'll see what comes up. But we've got this priority in a way based on our conversation tonight, bringing ease into the relationship with food. And before we shift into that, I do want to open it up for any other, like any comments, reflections. What's coming up for people? How are you feeling? Just a touch in.
One thing I'm noticing is that I'm definitely, my intuition that I was ignoring is now I'm seeing it full circle. So a year ago, I was like, I need to, one was like kombucha. I was drinking kombucha. and it was like, oh, it's really good, right? It's natural, it has a lot of sugar, but it's natural, blah, blah, blah. And then there was a point where I was like, I need to slow down the kombucha. And I just recently had a gut test done, and it's not so well, like the gut's struggling. And one of the things she said was no kombucha. So I found it interesting that full circle, like I was already saying that, didn't know why I was saying it, but I was kind of ignoring it because like, what do I know, But now that I'm starting to trust the intuition, I'm seeing it play out. So I find that very interesting.
That's so great.
Yeah, one of the things too, what you said about what we ate as children, I'm like Becca. I sat there, or I went to the bathroom, spit it out, or dumped it in the toilet. So to the point where my parents, I clogged the sink in the bathroom, so I got caught. But that led to just eating everything on my plate as well. That's another aspect of that. It's like my husband can just leave food on the plate, and I'm like, no, there's starving people in China.
Yeah.
So I still do that to this day. It's very difficult for me to let that go.
Yeah.
So just an
Yeah.
observation.
Thank you for sharing that. And if you're open to something to try, is don't fill the plate, or use a smaller plate. This way your serving is smaller, and then you can feel good about finishing the plate. Yeah. And there's a very big difference between feeding yourself as a female and feeding your husband as a male, right? Your bodies are totally different. And I had this with my brother, because we're twins, and like we did everything together, but like he could eat all this food and I would try to keep up with him, but like I'm shorter, I'm female, and it doesn't work for me. That I had to stop competing with him. It was like the area of our life that I couldn't compete anymore.
Yeah, so powerful. I love, thank you for sharing, both of you. And that, like, you just gave a beautiful example, Angelique, in my opinion, of how to make it easy. Like, okay, here's this challenge. We can see the belief. We can see how it was conditioned and kind of hammered in. Like, you finish all your food, you do this. And it's like, oh, because with a smaller plate, I can imagine going back and just getting more if I need more.
If you want,
so it doesn't
exactly.
take away that there's not enough food. It just allows it so that we don't have to have the guilt factor tied in there, or we like override the signal of full. Here we could maybe, it's like a little bit of a slower process. Perhaps that's what I imagine as I consider that. So I love that. And like here, that is a soft entry. Potentially. I mean, now subjective, I can't speak for everyone. For me, that would be a soft entry. Let me take that
if you're a person who doesn't like food touching each other, then it might get a little complicated. You could do small plates, like different plates.
I was just going to say that I can really, it's interesting to see, because I have two children and they're 11 and 13, almost 14 now. But when I was a kid, I was able to eat anything. Like, my mom basically was a single mom raising me until I was about 10. And my grandmother and great grandmother also like helped raise me a lot too. But my great grandmother, I noticed she ate very healthy. Like, it was mostly fruits and vegetables, like nothing processed. And she lived to be 91, died in her sleep, was like super healthy, would be out there shoveling snow in the winter and stuff. Yeah. My grandmother was another story. She ate pretty healthy, but she smoked like a pack a day, and so she had that. And then my mom, I mean, it was just like out of, I think, convenience. I mean, I would definitely ate a lot of processed junk. And my grandmother would give me candy bars all the time, just like anything, fast food all the time. I think my favorite vegetable was like canned green beans or corn, canned corn. But it's just so funny now that I have kids. it's really hard with the rules because I don't want them to eat like I did, and they ate pretty like really healthy until I feel like it was when they started to go other places, when other people, like my mom gave them candy, gave my oldest candy when she was 2, and I was like, no, she doesn't know what that is yet. Like I was so mad. But once she got that Kit Kat, it was like over. So it's just but I like how you focus on just like going back to the basics and simplifying it, like I try to remember that. Because I can get pretty crazy about kind of going to extremes, like with I mean, food isn't even food these days, like the
Yeah.
stuff that we buy at the store. It's like, and I have this app that tells you all like it's called Yuka, if anyone's interested in it, but all the additives, hazardous stuff that's in it. And it's actually helped kind of have some conversation with the kids instead of just telling them that's bad, and then they can scan it and see why, like, well, look what that does.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's helping them be more mindful and still giving them choices, but also like knowing why, like certain foods. And I try not to label foods as bad or good. I try to say like sometimes foods or all the time foods, but now that they're older, they get it. But
This is better
yeah,
for you.
yeah. But it's just like society, too. That's a huge factor. And they go to a friend's house and they have soda and they have chips and they have all
Mhm.
this stuff. And like, why can't you ever buy it? We have nothing to eat, because like like saltines is the, the kind of crunchy snack junk food that we have. But it's
Have a
just
carrot.
yeah. I know. I'm like, we have fruit and veggies. I'm like, we don't want that. But yeah, it's the struggle is definitely real with kids. But I think like I just appreciate. I love discover the mess too. I think that's something really that would work with kids as well. Like I
Mm,
just love that because it is. I think our minds overcomplicate things, and definitely the food industry and the wellness industry, even they try to
mhm,
confuse us to make
mhm.
money, and it works.
Yep.
So yeah. So I just I think water, nutritious food, sleep, play, movement is really it's all you need. Connection, stuff like that.
Mhm.
So yeah, I really appreciate everything y'all have been saying. It's hit
Amazing.
home.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah,
And with
thank
the
you for
kids,
sharing. Go ahead.
sorry, with the kids, especially at their age, getting them in the kitchen with you and getting them involved in preparing their own foods is so good for them. Not
Yeah.
just like it really gets them to eat. I was gonna write a kids cookbook and it's on the shelf somewhere. Like I may do it one day, but
Oh, you should.
it
Yeah.
really was about getting children of all ages into the kitchen. And of course, the recipes would be age appropriate, but it's really just about the experience, right?
Hmm.
Get them involved in preparing the shopping list, get them involved in, if you want to take them food shopping. I know sometimes that could be like, don't go hungry because then they're going to want
Oh
everything.
yeah. Yeah.
But get them involved in the whole process of what it takes to bring food from the store to the table. And it just really starts to, and then ask them, because they may want to try something different. Like, especially if you're in the produce section, right? There's just so much there that maybe they've never tried and might want to try or be curious about. And so that also might help kind of alleviate the stress around food with the kids.
Yeah, that's a great idea. They're gonna get some cooking lessons this summer. That's on our summer list. I'm like, you guys should start making us dinner now. But yeah, I think that's
Amazing.
great getting them involved and like even going to like a local farm or farmer's market
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. So I feel like we don't
Yes,
have that connection to the food we're eating now. We just see it on
exactly.
a shelf, but we don't know where it came from. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love
And
that.
like that, I love everything that you're saying, and like perhaps bringing in that play or that discovery as you're doing it. Shannon, I love what you said about. I really like what you said a lot about like sometimes food and always food, because, coming into that relationship with food, it can be really hard when it's like, no, you can't have this. Yes, only this. And then it's like, but I want that, or it's at my friend's house. And then it becomes, oh my gosh, do I not tell my partner I ate this thing? Or can I not tell my mom? Does it have to be, or then the guilt, we feel bad. So like the sometimes food and the always food, I think, especially in our culture. And then, if and when we're able to tie that into like, what is the body signaling? Do we really want an entire bag of Doritos, or what do we actually feel like after that versus after the snack? And without it, I think, being good or bad, or like, because that punishment way ties into, and I feel like it's a whole other conversation. So I'm going to shift us in just a minute, but like, is what's driving our relationship and our behaviors around food as well? Is it being driven by love? So like, okay, food has been challenging and I want to make it easier because that quality of life, man, it feels so much better. Or is it like the fear, like, oh my gosh, I'm afraid I'm going to gain weight, or I'm afraid I'm going to lose weight, or I'm afraid of what my mom said, or what I just heard, I've been in keto diet for 2 years and I just heard it's bad, right? It's like, take a breath. Okay, maybe it's working for me, and let's just start to see what else is out there, So I haven't been keto diet for 2 years, but I just met someone who has been, and they lost like 45 pounds on it. And I heard their whole story, and this was like last week. So
Yeah,
it's
I
like,
have a friend,
it's a lot
yeah,
to hear
whose
the
parents,
opposite now coming in.
right? Because now I have to think about what's next. Like, what am I going to do now?
Yeah. Yeah, so let's just shake all that out a little. If that feels good, moving through the body. Maybe bring the shoulders up to the ears and kind of squeeze it out a little, whatever feels welcome. And closing the eyes or lowering the gaze, we're going to tune into the energy here for a moment. So we've got Arizona, we've got New Jersey, we've got Austin, we've got Tennessee in the house at the moment. We've got a handful of folks who have registered to receive this. So everyone here and in the registry, those energies are all included in this session this evening. And so we just allowing for a moment, like the snow globe to settle, feeling again into the bottom, the root of the body. Let's take a full breath in. Smooth exhale. Just allowing each exhale to invite your body, your mind, your heart, your gut, your energy to sink into this moment just a little bit more. Maybe bringing the hands on to the body. Sometimes it feels nice to bring a hand over the heart, over the abdomen. Let's take a full breath. And smooth exhale. We're not trying to figure anything out at the moment. Everyone's going to have the recording. We can always go back to our notes or whatever's here. Right now, it's just about tuning in with the breath. And I'm going to share what is coming up so that we know, but just keeping in mind that really there's nothing even in that you need to attempt to understand at this moment or hold on to. So just allowing the whole self again to settle a little bit more with this exhale. So the priority that's coming up here, or the agenda, is around integration. So in whatever way this is, just imagining these pearls of information that have been shared tonight by Angelique, by myself, that have risen in your own body, mind systems, memories, thoughts, ideas. Let's just take a breath and imagine that already they're beginning to find a new home into a new relationship that leans toward serving the self, integrating all that's here. First thing coming in is we're going to balance the body chemistry. So if you'd like, I invite you to take a little lick of saliva on one of your fingers. I'm going to bring this in here, and you're just going to bring that right under the collarbone. This allows some of that internal body chemistry to be kind of read and registered through the wisdom body. Deep breath. We're balancing the whole body chemistry as it integrates this information. Beautiful. And so you can rest and receive, or if you feel called to be a little more active, you can take your hands and you can bring them to the sides of your head so that the palms are resting in the temples and the fingers reach toward the back of the head on both sides. Breathing in and exhaling. So I'm just going to tap this in. We're balancing the general body chemistry to all of the information, bits of knowledge, wisdom that are here. Good. You can allow your hands to relax wherever they want to go. The next thing coming up is we're moving into the heart. And so we're acknowledging the organ of the heart. We're acknowledging the heart in 3 layers. The organ, the heart chakra, which is the energetic field, this energetic vortex around the heart and of the heart. And we're also acknowledging that layer that I spoke about briefly, the heart brain. So although they're all separate, they're also one. Let's take a full breath in. Smooth exhale, and just noticing for a moment the sensations in the chest area. Maybe you notice a warmth or a coolness. Maybe you notice movement or stillness right there around that heart center. Maybe you can feel the beating of the heart. Might feel hollow or whole. There's no right or wrong, just noticing the textures. And taking a breath in, imagine as if the breath could be breathed right here into this heart center, as if it could breathe itself. And perhaps exhaling from there. I'm going to do that a few more times together, breathing in through the heart space. And exhaling. Good. Without forcing anything. There's no way this has to be. Breathing in through the heart. Maybe the breath comes in through the front and the back of the body. And exhaling. One more breath here. Beautiful. And then this word understanding. So just allowing the vibration of understanding. Maybe there's a time in your life, a memory or a person that comes to the top of your mind when you think of being understood, of receiving understanding. Maybe there's a color or a place, something in nature or a pet. Whatever it is for you, it could even be that word itself, the letters. Imagine that you could place this aspect of understanding right here into the heart center, as if it were landing in this, like a shelf. Just resting here with the attention, observing those textures or sensations in the heart center, allowing that vibration of understanding just to rest here. Breathing. Good. Let's take one more full breath into this heart space. like filling up this understanding, like we could fill up a balloon, breathing in and exhaling down into the wisdom, down into the gut brain, and allowing the information to travel up into the head brain and releasing out through the mouth. We'll do one more breath into the heart space, breathing in that vibration of understanding that's resting right here, down into the enteric brain, and all the way up through and into this incredible processing system of the head brain, sending new signals to the beliefs, to the functions, to the messages, and exhaling. Okay. All right, and so this is just linking into our whole energy field. Actually, the field of the heart measures, we can measure it today with tools that are available, the radiance of our heart and our heart energy field up to 8 feet outside of the body. So imagining this understanding in whatever way it shows up for you, understanding of the self, of your relationship with food, how it has been, how it is, how you want it to be, vibrating out all the way, filling this field and coming back into the self, just breathing. Good. Exhaling into the groundedness of self. And you can stay right here with this vibration, or if you'd like to be a little more active, we're going to tap this in, tapping over the top of the head, tapping over the heart, tapping over the abdomen, tapping over head, tapping over heart, tapping over abdomen. Good. Just resting for a moment. Noticing how your body mind feels. There is no right or wrong. Allowing. And so as we allow ourselves to listen to the sound and just being gentle, allowing that transition. And so I'm going to open it up again in just a moment, but before I do so, I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for being here, for tuning into this. One of the things that just came up in this session, a few things. There's an institute called the Heart Math Institute. If you haven't heard of it before, they're pretty incredible. And so what came up as a priority is which we incorporated into this roadmap for healing that we just did, is called the quick coherence technique. So it came up as that priority for understanding, talk about food for love and food as love. When we bring in understanding for ourselves, compassion, whatever that showed up for you. And the heart is a coherence generator. So as we land that in there, we bring the vibration, however it showed up for you. Maybe it was really, big, maybe it was very subtle. Doesn't matter. We've got the intention there. And that coherence begins to ripple through every cell in the body. And in this case, it really wanted us to know, like, this is surrounding us. It is in our field. And that also has to do with like our interrelationship, right? And as we integrate this information, the way that I interpret this, which, take it with a grain of salt, we're working with consciousness energy medicine. So, right. But the way I might interpret it is that as we integrate, we are integrating with the coherent vibe of understanding. playfulness, discovery, understanding, all in there. So thank you all. Thank you, Angelique. We do these connection events every couple months. There's an event every month through Active Exchange. You're going to get some resources, some of the articles I mentioned. Angelique has some a beautiful link to something that she's going to share, and any other pieces there. Maybe she'll tell us about the food sensitivity test that she loves. I don't know if that's reserved only for clients, and then I just want to open it up to any of you guys, any shares that you have, and knowing, like, just want to be respectful of time. We'll be closing in a few moments, but let's turn it over to you.
I just want to thank Becca and Angelique. It was very, very informative. For me, food and dieting has not been in my life at all. Like, it was always like I could always kind of maintain and keep it. And now I feel like I'm going into another phase of where I need to pay attention. I need to be more mindful. And so this was very timely. When we did the exercise, what I felt in my heart was softening, which I felt it was just relaxation and a softening of my heart. And thank you for the heart math reminder, because I have a little machine, the little thing. So I've been thinking about that and getting back to that. So you're another message. So I will move with that. Yes.
Do you have it right
So
there,
thank you very much.
Angelique? Heart
Yeah.
math. Hello. Amazing stuff, right?
Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to thank you both. It was so nice meeting you, Angelique. I love everything that you taught us and shared with us today, and very interested in your cookbooks. And I think you should write that children's one too, if you get around to it.
Thank you.
But yeah, this was amazing. I just loved the talk. I love how it didn't focus on food, really. It was everything else, our relationship. And, I think so much, we put so much focus on food, what kinds of food, like the diets and all that stuff. But there's a lot deeper connection and attachment and all that kind of stuff that goes along with it. So that was amazing. Thank you both. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think you bring up such a good point, right? Because, right, so here's this whole piece, right? There's a lot that can go into food, and there's the food. And sometimes, whether we are going through phases, changing phases in life, maybe there is a health thing that leads us to that, or we're getting into a different age, like, you name it, things happen. Somebody passes away, we are affected by all of these things, somebody comes into our life, fabulous, right? Like, changes. And so sometimes we may want guidance. And when we look out there into news and media and bookstores, like we said tonight, it can be very overwhelming. That's where someone like Angelique comes in and can help to guide, right? And someone who also has that wisdom of bringing in what's best for the self. Because, one of the things I love about what Angelique shares, at least through my lens, is it's like, Angelique, you share the way it works for you specifically, and it's like you'll give more details on that as wanted or as needed, but you also allow others to do their thing and receive the guidance and the wisdom and the tools that you have. So there are people that can help guide us if the overwhelm feels too much, or whatever that may be. And there's a word that y'all might know, but it's called orthorexia, which, not to get into like all the diagnostic terms, but I feel like, as I started to learn about the standard American diet and how it actually doesn't work so well with my body and my mind and my health, and then I started to shift into healthier eating, it was like the table tipped. There was a tipping point, and I was in the grocery store like, well, what do I eat? Nothing is on the list that feels like it's healthy for me. And that is like what I call that point of orthorexia. And it doesn't have to be that way. We take a deep breath, we go back to the basics. If and when we need, we get a coach, we look at some of these things. And it changes over time, right? It's not linear, one and done. It is a spiral path. So
Constantly evolving.
yeah. Thank you all so, so much. Deep bow for your presence, for your participation. Angelique, can't wait to see the new book. And yeah, I'm with Shannon, would love to see a kid's book. I have 10 nieces and nephews as of 2 weeks ago. So I got lots of
Amazing.
families I could be sending that to. And yeah.
I'll get on that.
All in time. I know it'll be all in time. So yeah. You guys have a beautiful evening. This will be here. I will probably get it out in like the next day or two, Monday at the latest. I try to be quicker, but you know, it's Friday. So what are you going to do?
Thank you so
Good
much.
night.
Have a good night, everyone.
Night.
Okay.